Zephyrus 6 was a planet so hostile, even the hardiest alien species couldn't survive its toxic atmosphere, bubbling acid swamps and jagged mountains. But for humans, this hellish landscape was just another tough mission. Mercenary Ben Cook crash-landed hard on Zephyrus 6, smashing into razor-sharp obsidian after a brutal dogfight with Betazoid warships high above the deadly world. Coughing up blood, he dragged his badly injured body from the twisted, smouldering wreck of his ship. A quick systems check confirmed his weapons were almost dry on ammo, and his SOS beacon was toast. Even worse, the planet's volcanic smog had corroded his armored spacesuit, leaving Ben vulnerable to the poisonous elements. But his real problem was the cloaked Betazoid strike team appearing from the toxic fog, training plasma rifles at Ben's head. Commander Xenos stepped forward, mandibles clicking furiously as he accused the human of running guns to Betazoid rebels. "Surrender now, human scum. You'll rot in a detention pit for your crimes." A sly grin crossed Ben's face as he slowly raised his hands. "All right, you got me." As the nearest trooper reached for binders, Ben hurled a flashbang from his belt, diving for the disoriented alien's weapon. Searing plasma bolts lit up the gloom as he sprayed fire at the Betazoids, their charred corpses thudding to the jagged ground. "After him! Bring me that damn human's head!" Xenos shrieked, returning fire as Ben vanished into the twisted fungal jungle. He had to capture this rogue quickly. A precursor holomap showed this seemingly abandoned planet was once their stronghold, and Xenos shuddered to imagine what might awaken if they stayed too long. But Ben was a human, born to overcome impossible odds. No matter what nightmares emerged on this Deathworld, one thing was certain: he'd find a way to survive. He had to. Xenos and his squad hacked through the dense jungle, their plasma machetes slicing through the thick, ropey vines that hung from gnarled trees. The air was thick with spores that made the Betazoid's eyes water and throats itch. Suddenly a strangled scream rang out. A thorny tendril had lashed around the neck of the rearmost trooper, hoisting him off his feet. His fingers scrabbled at the vine as it constricted, cutting off his air. The rest of the squad whirled around in time to see him dragged kicking into the undergrowth, disappearing from view. Xenos checked the casualty's vital signs on his HUD. Flatline, he was gone. "Watch the foliage, this planet is even more hostile than we thought," Xenos barked. No sooner had he spoken than more vines whipped out from the shadows, ensnaring 3 more soldiers. They thrashed and yelled as the tendrils coiled around them like constrictors. Burn it all!" Xenos roared. The Betazoids opened up with their plasma rifles, unleashing torrents of superheated gas that set the jungle ablaze. Burning leaves and blackened vines rained down. Through the flames, Xenos saw one of his men jerk and shudder as a barbed creeper punctured his chestplate and emerged from his back, dripping with orange blood. "Switch to plasma torches and cut us a path out of this death trap," Xenos ordered, as he hosed down the carnivorous foliage. Hours later, they emerged into a clearing dominated by the wreckage of a cyclopean alien structure, its geometry twisted and non-Euclidean. More vines enveloped the crumbling edifice like a strangling web. Xenos led his battered unit inside, their lights playing over desiccated corpses of eyeless, barrel-chested beings. A partially degraded log crackled from a corroded terminal, speaking of a cataclysm that had ravaged Zephyrus 6 and perverted its ecosystem eons ago. Meanwhile, Ben had taken refuge in a labyrinth of interlocking caves, seeking to evade the Betazoids. As he dressed his wounds, his hand inadvertently brushed a hidden sigil inscribed on the cavern wall. With a deep rumble, ancient machinery stirred to life. Walls shifted and ground together, sealing passages and changing the tunnel's configuration into an alien geometry. A menacing sentry bot, all whirring blades and glowing optics, dropped from a hidden alcove, its programming activated by the detection of an intruder. Scanning the caverns, the construct detected Ben's life signs and began its implacable hunt. Vicious implements extended. Wounded and weary, Ben now faced a battle for survival against both the planet's malevolent ecosystem and this relentless robotic guardian of the alien ruins. The sentry bot's clanking steps echoed through the caves, growing louder with each passing second. Ben pressed himself into a narrow crevice, barely daring to breathe. A barrage of micro-missiles streaked past, pulverizing the rock wall behind him and showering him with sharp fragments. He blind-fired his plasma rifle around the corner, but the bot's shield flared, easily absorbing the hits. Ben's eyes darted around, searching for any weakness he could exploit. There, an exposed conduit on the bot's underside, sparking with energy. He held his breath, waiting for the machine to step over his hiding spot. As soon as it did, he thrust his rifle's barrel into the conduit and held down the trigger, unleashing a sustained burst of plasma. The sentry bot convulsed, blue arcs of electricity dancing across its frame as the plasma ripped through its internals. It toppled over with a thunderous crash, its optics flickering and going dark. Miles away, Xenos and his surviving troops staggered out of the alien ruins, their armor scorched and dented. The true extent of Zephyrus 6's lethality was now burned into their minds. Xenos reached for his comlink, intending to call for an immediate evacuation and orbital bombardment to deal with the human once and for all. But before he could utter a word, a titanic roar shook the very ground beneath their feet. Xenos froze, a chilling realization dawning on him. The degraded log entry. This planet had been a precursor weapons testing facility, where they bioengineered living superweapons. The roar sounded again, closer this time, followed by the cracking of rock and the shriek of tearing metal. Fissures split the planet's crust, belching noxious gases, and from those depths emerged a pack of nightmarish creatures. Hulking beasts with armored hides, razor-sharp claws and maws filled with venomous fangs. They were unlike anything Xenos had ever seen. The monsters charged, shrugging off the plasma fire that the betazoids desperately unleashed. They tore into the aliens, their claws ripping through armor like paper, their fangs injecting potent venom that dissolved flesh and bone. Xenos managed to fell one beast with a micro-nuke, the explosion consuming the creature in a blaze of atomic fire. But there were too many. A second monster's tail slammed into Xenos, sending him flying into a ravine. He hit the ground hard, feeling bones snap. His armor's systems blared warnings of critical damage and internal bleeding. With a shaking hand, he activated his emergency beacon, calling for immediate extraction. In the caves, Ben heard the creature's roars and Xenos' distress call through the sentry bot's shattered remains. A cold sweat broke out on his brow as he realized the true extent of the horror he now faced. Zephyrus 6's most lethal dangers, the ones that had nearly destroyed the precursors, were now awake. And he was trapped on this Deathworld with them, along with the betazoids. The odds of survival had just plummeted from slim to near impossible. But Ben was human, and humans never gave up, even in the face of certain doom. Ben emerged from the labyrinthine caves, his eyes squinting against the toxic glare of Zephyrus 6's atmosphere. Overhead, a betazoid dropship descended through the noxious clouds, its engines roaring as it swooped down to extract the gravely wounded Commander Xenos from the ravine. But before the craft could touch down, a gargantuan beast leapt from the shadows, its armored hide glistening with caustic slime. The monster's jaws snapped shut around the dropship, crushing the metal like tinfoil. Sparks and flames burst from the ruined engines as the creature shook its head, tossing the mangled craft aside. Ben's heart raced as he scanned the hellish landscape, searching for any means of escape. In the distance, a towering alien structure loomed, its angular silhouette resembling a hangar. It was his only chance. He sprinted towards the structure, his boots pounding against the jagged ground. A pack of ravenous monsters suddenly emerged from a crevice, their eyeless faces splitting open to reveal rows of venomous fangs. They charged at Ben, their razor-sharp claws gouging the earth. Ben activated his armor's rocket boosters, launching himself into the air just as a beast lunged for him. He felt the searing heat of the creature's acidic saliva as it splashed against his armor, the corrosive substance eating away at the ceramic plating. He gritted his teeth and pushed the thrusters to their limit, rocketing over the horde of snapping jaws and lashing tails. The hangar grew closer, its cyclopean doors looming before him. Ben hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. He scrambled to his feet and raced inside, his heart pounding in his ears. The interior was cavernous and dim, lit only by the pulsing glow of ancient precursor technology. And there, resting in the center of the hangar, was a spacecraft. It was clearly of alien design, its hull battered and scarred, but it appeared functional. Ben rushed to the ship, clambering inside the cockpit. The controls were strange and arcane, covered in glyphs that made his eyes water when he looked at them for too long. He tore open a panel, exposing a tangle of luminescent conduits and pulsing circuit boards. Outside, the beasts had reached the hangar. Their talons raked against the metal doors, the screeching sound setting Ben's teeth on edge. He worked frantically, tearing at the wiring with shaking hands, trying to hotwire the ancient vessel. The doors shuddered as the monsters rammed against them, the metal denting and buckling under their relentless assault. Ben's fingers flew over the alien controls, desperately searching for the ignition sequence. With a roar that shook the hangar, the creatures burst through, their hideous forms silhouetted against the toxic glare of Zephyrus 6's sky. At the same moment, the ship's engines flared to life, the cockpit filling with a blinding radiance. Ben slammed his hand down on the thrusters, just as a beast lunged for the ship, its cavernous maw wide open. The spacecraft blasted forward, the searing exhaust incinerating the monster and its packmates in a wave of atomic fire. The ship rocketed out of the hangar, G-forces slamming Ben back into his seat as it tore through Zephyrus 6's atmosphere. Proximity alarms suddenly screamed as the vessel emerged into the void of space and straight into the heart of a massive battle. Human and Betazoid warships clashed against the backdrop of the stars, energy beams and missiles crisscrossing the void. The aliens were assaulting a ragged flotilla of human refugee ships fleeing a conquered world, their hulls pitted and scarred. Ben wrenched the controls, sending the precursor craft hurtling towards the nearest Betazoid cruiser. The alien ship was launching drop pods filled with troops, its shields lowered to allow the invasion craft to pass through. Seeing his chance, Ben gunned the thrusters, aiming the precursor ship straight at the cruiser's hangar bay. Pulse beams flashed past him as the Betazoids spotted the incoming vessel, but it was too late. The ship smashed through the hangar's atmospheric containment field, skidding across the deck in a shower of sparks. Ben leapt from the cockpit, his plasma rifle already spitting bolts of superheated gas at the startled Betazoid troops. Behind him, the precursor ship continued forward on autopilot, careening towards the far wall. And the cruiser's main reactor. Ben barely had time to dive behind a bulkhead before the ancient vessel impacted, its power core detonating in a blinding flash of antimatter annihilation. The explosion ripped through the cruiser, tearing it apart from the inside. Bulkheads crumpled like paper, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. The ship broke in half, its structure unable to withstand the titanic forces unleashed within it. Gas flames washed over Ben's hiding spot. A human boarding torpedo smashed into the hangar, its reinforced prow punching through the weakened hull. The breaching doors blasted open, revealing a squad of heavily armed human commandos. Their leader stepped forward, his scarred face breaking into a disbelieving grin as he saw Ben. "Cook? Ben Cook, is that you, you crazy bastard?" Ben looked up, his eyes widening. Jack Riker?" He let out a breathless laugh, accepting his old friend's hand and hauling himself to his feet. Jack clapped him on the shoulder, his grin fading. "Damn good to see you, Ben, but we've got a situation. That planet you just came from, Zephyrus 6, it holds the key to defeating the Betazoids once and for all." Ben's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I'll explain on the way," Jack said, gesturing for his squad to move out. "But we need to act fast. The Betazoids have an extermination fleet en route to destroy the planet and bury its secrets forever. If we don't beat them to it, this war is as good as lost." Ben nodded grimly, checking the charge on his rifle. "Then let's get moving. I've had enough of this hellhole to last a lifetime." The commandos filed back into the boarding torpedo, Ben taking one last look at the shattered remains of the Betazoid cruiser as the breaching doors slammed shut. He had a feeling that his trials on Zephyrus 6 were only the beginning. and that the true fight for humanity's survival was just getting started. Ben and Jack led their strike team back to the hellish surface of Zephyrus 6, the Deathworld's toxic atmosphere, searing their lungs even through their armored suits. The planet teemed with mutated horrors, each more grotesque and deadly than the last. Venomous tentacles lashed out from bubbling acid swamps, while hulking beasts with armored hides and razor-sharp claws stalked the jagged obsidian plains. The humans fought their way through the nightmarish gauntlet, plasma rifles blazing as they cut down the monstrous creatures. Ben ducked under a slashing talon and jammed his rifle into a beast's eyeless face, pulling the trigger and painting the rocks with its ichor. Jack covered him, unleashing a torrent of superheated gas that reduced a pack of serpentine horrors to ash. After hours of brutal combat, they finally reached the ancient precursor weapons facility, its cyclopean architecture looming over the hellscape like a malevolent god. Inside, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with arcane technology beyond human comprehension. And there, at the center of it all, was the Doomsday device. It was a massive sphere of pulsing energy, suspended in a web of crackling conduits and glowing runes. Ben approached it cautiously, his suit's sensors going haywire from the sheer power emanating from the artifact. "My God," he breathed. "The precursors built this thing to wipe out entire star systems, and it's still operational." A grim realization dawned on him. They could use this weapon to obliterate the heart of the Betazoid Empire, crippling their war machine and ending their genocidal campaign against humanity once and for all. But Jack shook his head vehemently. "No way, Ben. Using a weapon like this? We'd be no better than the Betazoids. And what if we can't control it? We could end up destroying innocent worlds too." Ben rounded on him, his eyes blazing. "Innocent worlds? The Betazoids won't stop until every last human is dead, Jack. I'm not going to risk our entire species going extinct just so we can keep our hands clean." As they argued, a sinister chuckle echoed through the chamber. Xenos emerged from the shadows, his armor battered, but his malevolent gaze as sharp as ever. Ben and Jack whirled around, weapons raised. "I knew you humans would lead me to the Precursor's greatest secret," Xenos hissed, his mandibles clicking. "I intercepted your little chat about this Doomsday device. If the Betazoid Dominion can't claim it, then neither can you." With a snarl, Xenos opened fire, his elite guard charging out from behind him. Ben and Jack dove for cover, returning fire as the ancient chamber erupted into a fierce battle. Plasma bolts and micro-missiles streaked back and forth, shattering age-old machinery and sending geysers of sparks into the air. In the chaos, a stray shot hit the Doomsday device's conduit, causing an ominous hum to fill the room. A robotic voice echoed from the walls, speaking in an alien language that their suit translators struggled to decipher. "Warning. Reactor breach imminent. Planetary core meltdown in T-10 minutes." Ben and Jack shared a look of horror. They had to end this now. Together they pushed forward, covering each other as they fought their way through the Betazoid elite. But Xenos was relentless, his plasma cannon spitting death with every shot. A bolt caught Jack in the chest, burning through his armor and sending him sprawling. Ben roared in rage and charged Xenos, closing the distance and slamming into the alien commander with bone-crushing force. They grappled furiously, trading blows that would have shattered human bones. Ben ripped off Xenos's helmet, staring into the alien's hate-filled eyes as he wrapped his hands around the Betazoid's throat. With a final savage twist, Ben snapped Xenos's neck, letting the lifeless body slump to the floor. He raced to Jack's side, cradling his dying friend in his arms. Jack coughed wetly, blood bubbling from his lips. "Ben, you have to destroy this place. Zephyrus 6, the Doomsday device. None of it can fall into Betazoid hands." Ben nodded grimly, tears stinging his eyes. "I will, Jack, I promise." As the facility shook itself apart around them, Ben staggered to the Doomsday device's control panel. With shaking hands, he input a new target, Zephyrus 6's core. He raced to the hangar bay, leaping into a precursor fighter just as the planet began to rip itself apart. Geysers of magma erupted from fissures in the crust, while mountains crumbled and acid seas boiled. Ben gunned the engines, rocketing into the stratosphere as Zephyrus 6 explosively decompressed behind him. The Doomsday device fired, a lance of pure antimatter boring into the planet's heart. For a moment there was silence. Then Zephyrus 6 detonated in a blinding flash of light, the shockwave atomizing the Betazoid extermination fleet in orbit. The blast caught Ben's fighter, sending it tumbling end over end, its systems shorting out from the EMP. As the cockpit went dark, Ben slumped back in his seat, exhaustion and grief washing over him. He had done it. He had avenged Jack and struck a crippling blow to the Betazoid war machine. But at what cost? Adrift and alone, with rescue growing more unlikely by the minute, Ben could only hope that his sacrifice had not been in vain, that the destruction of Zephyrus 6 and the Betazoid fleet would be enough to turn the tide of the war. In the silence of the void, he activated his suit's log recorder, his voice rough with emotion. If anyone finds this, I want you to know that it was humanity's resilience that got me through this, our refusal to surrender, even in the face of impossible odds. That's what allowed me to survive everything Zephyrus 6 threw at me. He took a shuddering breath, gazing out at the starfield beyond the cockpit. Maybe that same spirit will allow our species to outlast the Betazoids, even if I'm not there to see it, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Ben's lips twitched in a faint smile, a final spark of defiance. Humanity? We don't go down easy, and we sure as hell don't give up. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.